Subscribe to Nathan Oakley 9 to Nature.
So in the pre-show, I was pointing out that a guy who we played a clip for, I might as well just contextualize this by playing the clip.
So what's the end game of the Flat Earth movement PSYOP? I don't know, Melanie, but if there are still Flat Earth gatherings going on, I know who's not welcome. Me. You saw it, Melanie. You saw me get kicked off of their platforms. You saw me get banned from their events. Melanie was trying to help me get in, but they gave me the left foot of fellowship.
You know, if you really wanted to join a community, join the community of surveyors, navigators, pilots, builders, cartographers, and stuff like that. Learn about celestial navigation. I've learned about how the Earth is flat 5 ways from Sunday.
It's like, what's the end game for the PSYOP? Well, that has about half a dozen different implications based on what he's suggesting. Okay, so first and foremost, there's a game being played. Well, that implies that there's players and rules to the game. And further to that, that there's an end of the game. And he's then described that game with players and rules that there's an end of as being a PSYOP. So a psychological operation played as a game with opponents opposing each other. You go, okay, yes, that's correct. The game is beg the question that Earth is a sphere with its flat Earth prerequisite measurements and set that as a faith that's Western world prevalent in opposition to people who say it's not a sphere and label them flat earthers, and then have people argue about whether or not Earth is a sphere and call that the flat Earth debate. So when you've got a community, this guy saying apparently that he's been kicked out of, well then the community would be one of two groups. Either what we'll call anti-flat earthers, because the flat Earth debate is actually anti-globers. So the anti-globers brace against heliocentrism, and the anti-flat earthers brace against those who call themselves flat earthers, the anti-heliocentrists. So if you want to describe it as a PSYOP, there's roads that bring conspiratards to a subject of anti-globe, label them flat earthers, present them with a map, slap them on the arse and send them on their way to debate with fart-sniffing dweebs. But he's made it into people. He's made it into a passive social acceptance that he's been rejected from having. So presumably he's been in the group for a period as an anti-flat earther or a so-called flat earther anti-heliocentrist, and he's been ejected from one or other of those two groups in a controlled opposition style. I'm going to post a link to that particular YouTuber, as it's his clip that's kind of spared this discussion, because he's describing specifically flat Earth as a PSYOP or psychological operation. He's right. You've got a PSYOP where you've got anti-flat Earth, that's globe belief, versus what is labelled flat Earth, actually anti-globe belief. When you're describing building, surveying, charting, mapping, measuring Earth in any capacity, you are measuring Earth flat. What you aren't doing is not accounting, so negative claim, you're not accounting for Earth curve. No, they're just measuring it flat. But the way it's phrased is to stand in opposition to heliocentric belief. So with an automatic assumption of heliocentrism, that's globe Earth, based on flat Earth measurements, like in the geographical surveying over here, which is what we're describing. But we're not describing it, we're convoluting it into anti-globe, somehow been labelled flat Earth. Yeah, that's why he's right when he says it's a PSYOP. It's what we're trying to walk away from. We've been handed these arguments and phraseologies, like this particular phraseology, so that we brace against the controlled narrative. The controlled narrative's globe, so not flat. It's not globe from the flat earthers. When it says engineers don't account for curvature, you're inviting an opponent to say, oh yes they do, oh no they don't. It turns into a pantomime. Now what are they doing when they measure and survey the territory to build things? Well, the surveys measure deviations in the topography of the world's surface level from sea level, a common reference to give you altitude in the perpendicular, depth of hills and valleys, and it's got a master reference called sea level to do it. That's how you survey and build. Now, if you're doing it in a very localized area, you might not necessarily reference the level terrain that you're achieving for a very small building to anything other than its own local level topography when you level the ground you build on. But as a master reference for how high that building ends up compared to any of the buildings in the surrounding area for lines of sight and various other practically used things or mapping and surveying purposes, then it's going to be built with respect to an overall common reference called sea level. The master reference being an average thereof called mean sea level. That's where we get our topographical deviations from. So when you've got people saying surveyors and engineers don't account for curve, who gives a crap what they're not accounting for elephants either. They're not accounting for mystical beings coming. They're not accounting for Freddy Krueger coming and stabbing them in their sleep either. Let's not worry about what they're not accounting for. What they are accounting for is horizontal linear mile measurements and topographical deviation from that horizontal plane of reference in the vertical. And they've got millimeter accuracy when they take those measurements to build things. So if you're going to build a railway, you're just talking about a big building project. It's different to building a building, but you're surveying the entirety of the country. Well, I've already done that. They've already got geographical accuracy to the millimeter from Ordnance Survey. The gradient over the length of the entire country has to be within a range because the trains themselves can't cope with a greater than X incline. What's the incline? Well, that's a measured flat earth prerequisite also. So everything about building a railway fundamentally relies upon horizontal axioms, sea level, millimeter accuracy in the vertical with reference to that master reference at mean sea level at 0. That's what we do. Let's not worry about not accounting for Freddy Krueger, not accounting for Jason Voorhees. Let's not worry about not accounting for curvature. Especially when accounting for curvature, what does that actually mean? Well, in reality, it means accounting for the topographical deviations from horizontal when we measure and survey Earth. But for a isolated PSYOP argument, it's the 8 inches per the flat Earth mile squared curvature that relies on having a flat linear mile to derive a squared function from it. Or an inference that the sphericity is more accurately described from a 3959 radius value that's also flat and linear in miles. Everything about globe Earth belief is derived from flat Earth horizontal with a elevation angle at a minimum that gives you an equator. That's a flat Earth angle to derive said radius that's also flat and linear in miles. It's all flat to produce a ball, to set it as the prerequisite, to beg the question of it, and then have somebody who calls himself a flat earther brace against processes that measure Earth flat, not accounting for bleeding Earth curve that's derived from flat Earth measurements also. It's an absolute pantomime.